Hi, this is Lori with Time to Be Creative, and today I'm going to build the album cover for the toilet paper tube Booty-ful album. We made our pages from the paper pad by My Mind's Eye called Sunshine. It's in golds and black, and I have a larger paper pad for that paper design as well, but the larger paper is not a heavier weight paper. It's just a regular paper. It's kind of thin, so I don't really want to use that on my cover. I want something a little more durable, and so I can use this for my photo mats, and I may use some of this to embellish my cover, but I'm going to cover the book itself in some 65-pound just black cardstock. And so what I've done is I've cut my pieces of chipboard. I'm just doing a traditional cover. We'll just open up like a regular album or a binder, if you will. And so I've measured my toilet tubes. They measure about 2.5 inches this way down the spine, and then 4 inches across. I'm making it to open horizontally. So I have cut my chipboard 3 1/4 to give myself a little bit of room on the edges, and then at 4.5 inches to give myself a little space at the opening. And then my spine piece, the spine measures 1.5 inches, and so I've measured my spine piece at 2 inches to give myself just a little bit of wiggle room, and then of course the 3 1/4. So when I lay out the plan for the cover, it would look like this. I want to make sure I leave an 1/8 of an inch gap in between my front, the back spine, and the back cover. And as you can see, my cardstock is not large enough, so I'm going to have to tape my cardstock together. I like to only have 1 inch extra paper around the perimeter of my books, so that when I fold the paper in, it's not only easier to handle, it also gives you a cleaner, nicer finish on your book. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first tape my paper together, and for that I'm going to use some score tape, and I'm just going to run a couple of pieces of tape along the one edge of my paper. You don't want your book to fall apart, so you don't want to be stingy with the tape. And because I'm going to have plenty of room, being as I'm piecing it together, I'm going to use 3 strips of tape. 2 is probably sufficient, but I'm just going to use 3. I apologize, I have my camera set right up on my table, and I know a lot of times when I rub down and press down my tape, I wiggle the camera, so I'm going to try to be a little gentle with that, but you want to really give that tape a good press. And then all you do is just remove the paper backing of your tape. Now what I'm using here is 65-pound black cardstock. It's solid core, that means it's black all the way through. First time I bought cardstock, I purchased some that I felt was reasonably priced, but then when I cut it, it wasn't black all the way through. It was just a white paper coated with black, and I just didn't really like that because then you can see the white. So this is solid black, and it's 8.5 by 11. Of course, you can purchase 12 by 12 cardstock, but I don't have any. So I'm just using what I have available. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to carefully line this up. Just going to drop my second sheet of cardstock right on top of that tape area. And again, I'm going to give that a good press. Now this is much wider than what I need. I probably could have trimmed that first, because now that I think about it, it's not going to fit on my trimmer. But we'll make do. So what I like to do is, if you feel confident that you can tape down your pieces, go ahead and do that. I like to mark it off just because I tend to be a little anal, and I like to just make sure I have it in the right place. So I usually like to have at least an inch on each side of my book, on all four sides actually. And so I like to mark off where that inch comes in. And then I can lay a ruler on this inch line and keep myself on a straight and narrow, if you will. So once I place my pieces there, again, I only want an inch from here. So I'm just going to take a little extra time. That comes in at an inch, so here I'm about an inch and 4 1/4. So I'm going to go at about 5 1/4 and mark that off. I might have done 3/8. So I want to cut off this excess paper because I don't really need to deal with that. Now let's see how if I can do this with mine. I don't think that's going to work. What I'm going to do is take a large ruler. I'm going to give myself a guideline. As soon as I started taping that paper together, I thought, oh, I should have cut that first. But this will be okay. Some of you may not have a paper trimmer. You use a regular pair of scissors anyway, which is fine. So I'm just going to trim off this excess. Then I'm going to have excess on the ends as well. Now one thing to keep in mind is being as you piece your paper together, if you're using smaller sheets like I am, if you're using 12 1/2, you won't have to do this. Is that you want this seam, you want your spine to be right where the center of your spine to be right where that seam is, so it's not going to have any extra tugging or pulling. So I always line up my spine right there in the center and then put down my pieces. And then I'm going to have extra here, but that's okay because I can always use that on another project. So then again, I'm just going to get an idea about where that inch mark is on both ends. Doesn't have to be exact. Unless, of course, you're more anal than I am. So now I'm going to use my paper trimmer for this. And I'm just going to take off that excess paper, and I'm just going to line that up, eyeball it. Now next I'm going to tape the edges of my chipboard, and for that I'm going to use my score tape. And you're going to score and tape all 4 edges of your front, back, and spine pieces. You can certainly write on here if you think that might help you initially when you do your first book. Of course, you can create different looks for your closures on your covers. This is just going to open up like a 3-ring binder. But you can fill in the end to make your book kind of look like a box, and you can also have a piece wrap around onto the front cover. I'll show you what I mean when I get this taped up. I should have probably taped these off camera. It just really takes a few minutes. And then once you get your tape on, you're going to again press it down with your bone folder. They call burnish it, so you get a good stick. Now here I had the tape stuck to my finger, so I'm just going to trim that off. Press down all sides. This is really not hard. It's just not even really time consuming. You just have to stay at it. So I have my markings at the top. Oh, I was going to show you. So if I did this binding is going to look like this. It's going to open like that. But you can also do a book where you add an additional piece here, and then you can have a latch mechanism here and close your book. Or you can add an additional piece where you wouldn't do it this thick, but just so you get the idea. I don't think I have another small piece handy to show you where it can just let's see, here's a piece. It's not too bad. You would just add on another piece here that would lap over, and then you could put a magnet there. And all that entails is just adding additional pieces in your layout, leaving your 1/8 inch gap, and just making sure you have enough paper to cover. But today we're just going to do the regular binder type closing. And so I like to come in with my ruler to give myself a straight edge. And this is where I'm going to be putting my back spine. Then I need my back cover, or the way you're looking at it would be the front cover. And then my other piece. And then I can kind of use these markings on my ruler to know where I have to put my cover. Sometimes I just mark it like this. Just give myself little lines so I know where to put it. So then once you're all set and you know where you want to put your cover, generally I line this up a little better so I can have my ruler's really crooked on that side. Then you're just going to take the paper tape off of your, I always start with the spine. Take the paper tape portion off of your spine piece. I hold down my ruler. I start with the edge of my spine piece. Whoops. That doesn't help. It's hard to see. I have my light off and it's hard to see the seam on the black. So here's my seam. So I want to make sure I have my spine piece centered there. And I'm just going to put that up against my ruler and then press that piece down. Okay. And then remove the tape. The paper portion of your tape off of your next piece. Again, I hold my ruler securely. I just tip my edge in. I look for that 1/8 of an inch marking. I want to make sure my ruler is straight. And then I just lay it down and then give it a press. And then my final strip. Normally I would throw this paper tape into my trash can, but right now I've got it covered with a box of supplies. So I'm working a little messy. I'm going to hold down that ruler again. I'm going to come into where I want have myself an 1/8 of an inch gap in between my pieces. And then I'm going to come in, give that a little press. And then come in with my bone folder and press down all those edges. And you want to, now see, of course I have a lot less on this edge because I went with the lines on my ruler and I have a little more here. But we'll be able to work with that. Then you want to miter the corner of your book. You want to leave at least an 1/8 of an inch gap here. I guess you could use a little bit less. I like to trim mine off with the ruler. And this will give you nice finished corners. I'm just going to cut that with my scissors. The more covers you make, the more comfortable you'll get cutting away this paper. Like here, I'm going to cut off a little bit more. And I think I'm just going to come down here and cut a little bit off of this edge. Alright, then you're going to come in with your score tape again, and we're going to score from each side right across the gaps in your book. I'm going to do each end. And again across the long edge. I'm going to cross this last end. And then you're going to do the outside edge of the paper that you're using to cover your book. Now, if you really have your heart set on using the patterned paper that you're using, you can certainly piece that together as well if it's not large enough. But sometimes those paper patterns come in a couple different sizes, the 6x6 or the 8x8 and then the 12x12. Just depends on what you have available. You want to get all your edges. Usually the tape tears a little easier for me. I seem to be having a little bit of trouble tearing it today. You can always cut it with your knife or with scissors. So you want to make sure all those edges are covered. And then you want to again give it a good press. With your bone folder. So you just want to go along all these edges. Make sure you've got everything down. Press down. Now if you've looked at any of my other Hub articles, or read any of them, or watched any of my other videos, you've probably heard me say that I watch a couple of girls on YouTube that scrapbook. And I watch Ginger, my sister's scrapper, and she has given a couple of tips. One of the things she does is she takes her bone folder and she runs it along the outside edge of her book. And she finds that that helps her with folding the paper. And so what you want to do is if you score that just a little bit, and then you just start rocking your paper. You just want to take your time. You're just starting to move that paper to get that bend going. If you just pull it up and fold it, sometimes your paper will tear. And sometimes when you're real careful it tears. Just depends on the paper and the quality of the paper. And you don't always know that when you buy it. If you're anything like me, you're I just really get excited when I see certain paper. And it doesn't, sometimes it just doesn't matter how well it's made. I just want to use it for a project. So once you get that paper where it's really starting to move and you can fold it up over the chipboard, then you're just going to come back in and remove that paper tape. And try not to get yourself stuck to it. So then what you do is you just fold your paper up over the chipboard, and then you're going to come in, I'll see I got myself stuck there, and really press down those edges so you get a good stick. We're going to do the same thing with the next side. Once you get that where it easily folds up, you're going to come back in and take out the tape covering of your score tape. Now see, I don't know if you can see it here. Let me hold it up to the camera. Like here I got some tape here. It's off the edge of the paper. So I just fold that in. To me that just gives extra adhesive. You can trim that off, but I just fold it in. So then fold up this side. Again, you're going to burnish that down. Now, one of the videos when I was watching Ginger, she does something I think is really cool here on the end pieces. Again, you're going to rock that and move that paper as well as you can. When she takes off her tape and gets ready to fold that in, now this is the corners that we mitered. You'll always have a little bit right here that never seems to fold in properly. But in order to get a neater corner, she takes her bone folder and she kind of pushes that in right there on that edge. She does the same on the other side. This one kind of did it itself. So she just takes her paper right here and kind of crushes that and pushes that in, so that when you come up and fold your corners, you have a real neat finish. That looks pretty good. This one probably could have been a little neater on this end. And then this extra glue here, we're going to cover that, but you can also peel that off if it bothers you. I tend to pick and peel. So I'm going to do the same thing at the other end. I'm going to take off the paper, tape. And I'm going to push in that extra little fold of paper here on the end. Try to give myself a really tight finish. And then I'm going to rock that. And then bring that up. And if you really want to, you can really measure those corners when you miter them, and it would look a little better here. But we're going to cover that. So you don't have to make yourself crazy. So that's our cover. And although I thought I put this in the center of my binding, it looks like I got it right on the edge. So I'm not sure how that's going to work. But now you want to work these pieces here, because that's where your book's going to bend. And you just want to take your time and just start lifting it gently. Just a little bit at a time. Sometimes you might need to come in here and just give that little bit of a press. But you're just going to work that easily. And then you're going to do the same thing with this side. Just take it slow and steady. That's just worth a couple extra minutes of your time. Now, I hope you can see that, but where I taped my paper together is right here. I was having a hard time seeing that. I really wanted it down the center here. So I'm probably going to do something to embellish that when we embellish the cover. But this is basically it. And then once we get the inside covered, our book will be taped in there. I have it backwards. And we'll adhere that in there. This is how it will open. So that's the basics of creating a cover for your album. You can use the same process for any album that you're making. It doesn't have to be a toilet paper tube book. Any kind of scrapbook that you might be working on, you can use this system of making a cover. So I think that's it for right now. The next tutorial will be putting the pages in the book, lining the cover, and then probably embellishing the pages and creating our photo mats. So I thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time.